The rain hit the sidewalk like a soft drum beat, soaking the hem of Callie Dawson's yellow raincoat as she stood outside the glass facade of Stratacore Dynamics. Her small hand gripped the laminated folder tighter, the one with her mother's resume certifications and neatly printed cover letter. From where she stood, the 38-story tower loomed into the gray Seattle sky, its name etched in brushed steel above the revolving doors. She wasn't supposed to be here, but it was 8:43 a.m. on a Tuesday, and her mum's job interview was scheduled for 9:00. Except her mum was in Swedish Medical Center, hooked up to a breathing machine in ICU room 204, and Callie didn't know who else to ask for help. Inside the lobby was full of adults who looked like they knew exactly where they were going. They walked quickly in black coats and clicked across the marble floors with purpose. No one looked down, except the woman at the reception desk. Callie stepped forward and tried to make her voice steady. "Excuse me," she said. The receptionist glanced up, eyebrows lifting when she spotted the child. "Yes, sweetie. Are you lost?" Callie shook her head. She had practiced this part in her head all morning. "My name is Callie Dawson. My mum, June. Dawson had a job interview here at 9. She's really sick, and I was wondering if you could maybe move it to another day." The receptionist blinked. "Move the interview?" Callie nodded and placed the folder gently on the counter, the plastic glossy with rain. "She has pneumonia. She couldn't breathe last night, so I called 911. She's at the hospital now, and she said this job was really, really important. So I thought if someone knew, maybe they'd let her come another time." Behind her, a pair of elevator doors pinged open. A man in a dark coat with salt and pepper hair stepped out, flanked by 2 assistants. He walked with the kind of sharp, practiced posture that made people instinctively step aside. Nathan Cole hadn't expected to pause in the lobby, but something in the receptionist's tone caught his attention. "Excuse me, Mr. Cole," the assistant murmured, tapping his tablet. "Legal is waiting upstairs." He didn't respond. His eyes were already locked on the child at the counter, her face barely clearing the desk edge, her voice calm but trembling. "Can I help with something?" he asked, approaching. The receptionist immediately straightened. "Mr. Cole, this little girl says her mother had an interview this morning, but she's in the hospital. She's asking if we can reschedule it." Nathan turned his full attention to Callie. Up close, he saw the smudges under her eyes, the fraying fabric of her sleeve, and the bright plastic clasp on the raincoat that had been fastened slightly crooked. "What's your mother's name?" "June Dawson." She was interviewing for the project coordinator position. He recognized the name. HR had flagged her as overqualified but unemployed for 6 months. She had a resume with 8 years of consistent experience, and a quiet note in the margin about being a single mother. Nathan crouched slightly so they were eye level. "Why did you come here today, Callie?" "Because this was important to her," she said simply. "She stayed up late reading about your company, even though she was coughing a lot. She told me if she got this job, we could get better insurance and maybe move out of our old apartment. So I didn't want her to miss the chance." Nathan didn't speak. Something about the way she stood, still and careful, felt painfully familiar. He saw the outline of another small face in his memory, one he hadn't allowed himself to summon in years. "What hospital is she at?" he asked. "Swedish Medical Center," Callie answered. "Room 204, ICU." Nathan stood. "Samantha clear my morning?" His assistant looked up, startled. "So cancel the legal meeting. Reschedule it for Thursday. I'm going out." He looked back down at Callie. "Would you mind showing me the way?" She nodded slowly, unsure. "I guess." "Are you going to tell her she can still have the interview?" "No," he said, walking toward the door, I'm going to tell her in person." The lobby watched in silence as the CEO of Stratacore Dynamics held the door open for a 7-year-old girl in a yellow raincoat and followed her out into the Seattle rain. The black company SUV pulled away from the curb windshield wipers, sweeping rhythmic arcs across the glass. Callie sat in the back seat, buckled in beside a man whose face she had seen only once on the framed posters in her mum's job search emails. Nathan Cole, founder and CEO of Stratacore Dynamics. He didn't speak for the first 5 minutes, glancing occasionally at his phone, then back out the window at the wet streets of downtown Seattle. Callie stared at her rain-soaked sneakers. Finally, he said, "I like your folder." She looked up. "My mom made me laminate it. She said, 'Good resumes deserve good protection.'" Nathan smiled faintly. "Smart woman." Callie watched the city blur past. "Are you mad at me?" "No," Nathan said. "Why would I be?" "Because I kind of messed up the schedule. And I'm not really supposed to be in offices or cars with strangers." He glanced at her. "I suppose I should thank you for making an exception." She gave a half smile, the kind that only lasted for a second. Then her fingers knotted in her lap. "She didn't want me to see her like that," Callie said quietly. "At the hospital. But she couldn't breathe, and I didn't know what else to do." Nathan didn't answer right away. He looked out the window as if something outside might help him find the right words. "I lost my daughter," he said eventually. So softly she almost didn't hear him. Callie turned toward him, eyes wide. "She was little. Not much older than you. After it happened, I got good at building walls." He looked at her. "You reminded me what it feels like to care anyway." The rest of the ride was quiet. At Swedish Medical Center, Callie led him with uncanny familiarity through the sliding doors past the front desk and into the elevator. "4th floor," she said, pressing the button like a pro. They stepped into the ICU. It smelled of antiseptic and fatigue. Nathan stayed back as Callie entered room 204. Her mother was propped up in the bed, pale but alert, a nasal cannula delivering oxygen. She looked up in surprise. "Callie," her voice broke. "What are you doing here?" "You're supposed to be at Mrs. Delaney's." "I had to," Callie whispered. "I asked them to wait for your interview. I didn't want you to lose it." Nathan stepped into the room. June's eyes widened. "Oh my God." Her voice cracked again, this time from disbelief. "You're Nathan Cole," he said, approaching the bed. "Your daughter asked for a second chance." Very politely. June closed her eyes for a moment. "I am so sorry. She shouldn't have gone there." "She didn't ask for the job," Nathan interrupted gently. "She asked if someone would please reschedule it." June opened her eyes, ashamed and overwhelmed. "We were up all night. I shouldn't have even tried to prepare, but it felt like a real opportunity. Then the fever hit and he raised a hand. "Monday, 9 a.m. Your new interview slot." June stared at him. "You're serious?" Nathan nodded. "Let's call it a performance reschedule. I don't know what to say." "Save it for the interview," he said. Then hesitated. "Also, I've arranged for the hospital to send the invoice to Stratacore's office." June sat upright too quickly. "No, that's too much. I can't accept charity." "It's not charity," Nathan said. "It's an investment in a candidate who raises remarkable daughters." Callie's cheeks flushed. As he turned to leave, Callie caught up to him at the doorway. "Will they let you get in trouble for this?" He paused. "I built the company, Callie. If they fire me for being decent, then I guess I didn't build it right." She thought about that for a second. "Would you like some apple juice?" Nathan blinked. "Excuse me. I stole 2 from the nurse's fridge." She held one out like a peace offering. Nathan took it. "You are trouble." "I'm resourceful." she corrected deadpan. As he walked down the hallway, the unopened apple juice still in his hand, Nathan Cole felt the gears of his world shift ever so slightly. Not in a dramatic way. Not yet. But like a turn in a road he hadn't realized he'd been following until now. Nathan returned the next afternoon. No security detail, no briefcase, just a plain charcoal jacket, dark jeans, and a bag of groceries slung over one arm. Room 204 was quieter this time. The monitors blinked their slow, persistent rhythms. June Dawson sat upright, eyes closed, hair pulled back in a makeshift knot. She opened her eyes when she heard the soft knock. "You again," she said hoarsely, adjusting her nasal tubing. "You don't seem like the kind of CEO who does house calls." Nathan stepped inside. "I brought applesauce, and tea, and a legal pad." June blinked at him. "For your mock interview," he said simply. She stared at him. "You can't be serious." "I'm always serious," he replied, placing the items on the tray beside her bed. "Especially when I'm trying to understand what a good hire might sound like under suboptimal conditions." June gave a dry laugh. "This is insane." "Possibly. But Callie convinced me you were worth the paperwork." A nurse entered mid-conversation, raised an eyebrow at the scene, and quickly exited with the air of someone who'd seen stranger things. Nathan pulled over the visitor's chair and flipped open the legal pad. "Walk me through your most complex project at your last job." June stared at him for a moment. Then instinct took over. Her tone shifted, spine straightened, and she began to speak. Slowly at first, then with mounting clarity. "I coordinated a multi-department logistics integration between domestic shipping and international warehouse teams. The budget was constrained, timelines were tight. I had to create a new risk mapping matrix when one vendor defaulted. We still delivered under budget 4 days early." Nathan raised an eyebrow. "And why did you leave?" June hesitated. "Layoffs, post-acquisition. They eliminated my role when they restructured the project pipeline, and the new CTO didn't want remote teams, which made parenting incompatible." Nathan jotted something down. "Any questions for me?" he asked. June gave a tired smile. "Do you usually do surprise interviews with ICU patients? I'm exploring new methods." June's smile faded. "Why are you doing this?" "Really?" He paused. "Because your daughter didn't ask for a favor. She asked for fairness. That's rare." He stood. "And because I've seen what happens when smart women are quietly shut out of the game." June looked down. This world wasn't built for single parents, especially not ones who can't afford a nanny or a lawyer. "No," Nathan agreed. "But maybe it's time we start rebuilding parts of it." As he left the room, he passed Callie in the hallway, coloring in a waiting chair with a nurse watching from across the corridor. She looked up. "How'd she do?" "Better than half my VP team," he said. Callie beamed. "She always does." Back in the car, Nathan didn't ask to be driven home. Instead, he gave the driver the company address. Back to Stratacore, back to the machine he'd built, and was suddenly seeing with different eyes. The elevator dinged softly as it reached the 34th floor of Stratacore Dynamics. Nathan stepped out into the executive corridor, where floor-to-ceiling windows cast long reflections over polished concrete. His assistant Priya was already on her feet. "Legal wants 10 minutes, she said. "Also, your lunch with Galveston Logistics was confirmed, and HR wants clarification on the interview reschedule. Have someone send June Dawson a box of interview materials," he said, heading toward his office. "And a company overview, the internal one, not the fluff. Also," he paused, "set up an internal billing channel." Quietly, Priya hesitated. "Sir, is this going to become a thing?" Nathan turned slowly, his expression unreadable. "It already is," That afternoon in the break room, 2 floors down, 2 interns noticed something new on the corkboard, a hand-drawn thank you card in bright marker, with a shaky but proud signature. Dear Mr. Cole, thank you for helping my mum. I think you are very tall and probably don't eat enough. Love, Callie. The card was pinned beneath a Polaroid of last year's company BBQ. People noticed. By Thursday, the whispers had started. Did you hear the CEO cancelled a board call to go to the hospital? Someone said there's a kid involved, like a little kid. He's never even visited finance before. Now he's walking around with a grocery bag. Nathan made no attempt to explain himself. Instead, he stopped by HR. I want a complete review of all active hiring protocols involving caregivers. Filter out positions with unreasonable scheduling clauses. Marlene Chase, VP of Human Resources, blinked. I don't follow. Then learn too, Nathan said. Also mark the Dawson file for final round review. Monday, 9 a.m. He left without waiting for a response. Friday morning, Nathan arrived early. Not for the emails, not for the client calls. He found himself drifting toward the small glass lounge on the 18th floor, a place rarely used outside of holiday parties. He wasn't sure why he went, maybe because he thought no one else would be there. But Callie was. She sat cross-legged in one of the oversized leather chairs, cradling a juice box and talking quietly to the head of marketing, Thomas, a kind man with twin daughters. She was explaining color psychology. If your ads used more green, people would think it's calming. But the orange makes it feel like medicine commercials. Thomas nodded solemnly. That actually makes a lot of sense. Nathan leaned against the doorframe. Ms. Dawson, he said dryly, should I be concerned about a minor influencing brand strategy? Callie looked up, grinned. Not if you're flexible. Thomas chuckled and gave a small salute before slipping out. Nathan stepped inside. Does your mum know you're here? She said I could wait downstairs, but Priya said it was okay to come up here while she printed papers. And they gave me a name badge. She pulled out a bright sticker that said, Visitor, in bold blue letters with Callie written in crayon. Nathan sat across from her. You seem very at home in this building. I like the elevator buttons. And the smells? The smells, yeah. This floor smells like printer ink and the other one smells like burnt coffee and cologne. Nathan laughed before he could stop himself. It caught him off guard, a sound too rare lately. She tilted her head. You laugh like you forgot how. He sobered slightly. Maybe I had. Callie finished her juice and crumpled the box. Are you going to fire people if they don't like my mum? He blinked. What makes you think they won't like her because she's tired? And tired people make mistakes, but not big ones. Nathan considered that. No, he said. I won't fire anyone, but I might change a few things. Callie nodded. That's fair. As he walked her back to the lobby to meet Priya, she looked up at him and asked, Did you really build this whole place? Nathan glanced at the glass and steel around them. I did. She thought for a moment. You must have been very tired, too. And for a moment, Nathan couldn't answer. June Dawson stood in front of the reflective glass doors of Stratacore Dynamics, trying not to think about the second-hand navy blazer that didn't quite fit at the shoulders. Her breath fogged in the crisp Seattle morning air. She glanced down at her phone, 8:49 a.m. Callie had insisted on brushing her mum's hair that morning. First impressions matter, she'd said, all seriousness. June had kissed her daughter's forehead before sending her off with Mrs. Delaney. Now she wiped her clammy palms on her skirt, squared her shoulders and walked inside. The receptionist recognized her instantly. Good morning, Miss Dawson. You're expected. She handed June a badge and nodded toward the elevator. "34th floor," she said. "Mr. Cole's assistant will meet you there." As the elevator rose, June felt the air tighten in her chest, not from illness this time, but from the strange sensation of being noticed. Not pitied, not ignored. Seen. When the doors opened, a young woman with a tablet stood waiting. "Ms. Dawson, I'm Priya. Right this way." She guided June through a sleek hallway and into a medium-sized conference room with a pitcher of lemon water, a laptop, and a small stack of paper neatly placed on the table. Marlene Chase, VP of HR, entered next. Tight bun, neutral suit, smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Thank you for coming, Ms. Dawson. Feeling better, I hope, yes." "Thank you." June took the offered seat. "Much better." Marlene flipped open a folder. "Before we begin, I do want to say, this is a formal interview. I understand Mr. Cole has taken a personal interest in your application, but this is still a standard process." June gave a short nod. "Understood." Marlene didn't waste time. "You were at Genix Tech for 3 years as a project lead." Wily June folded her hands. Their budget was absorbed during the merger. "My role was dissolved. I finished all open timelines and trained my replacement. And before that, 6 years at Karen Bloom. I left voluntarily after relocating to care for my mother. She didn't mention the hospital nights, the debt, the quiet way that job disappeared when her mother died." Marlene narrowed her eyes. "Several gaps in employment." "Can you explain?" June took a breath. 2 of them were due to single-parent responsibilities. My daughter had health complications in kindergarten, and I chose to pause my career temporarily. The others were from positions that closed due to downsizing. I was not dismissed for cause from any. Marlene's pen didn't stop moving. That can be a challenge in a high-speed environment like Strata Core. June didn't flinch. "I understand the concern, which is why I've built a 4-tier contingency plan for childcare. 2 vetted babysitters, 1 after-school program, 1 emergency drop-in network. I've never missed a major project deadline due to personal issues." Marlene opened her mouth to continue, but the door opened and Nathan Cole stepped in. He didn't speak immediately, just looked at June then, at the folder on the table. "Ms. Dawson," he said, "what's the one thing you've learned from raising a child alone?" June met his gaze, calm and clear, that there's no room for ego, just priorities. You plan, you execute, and you adapt fast. Nathan nodded. "That's what I need in a project coordinator." Marlene cleared her throat. "We're still in the interview phase." "She's hired," Nathan said, quietly, turning to leave. Then he stopped and added, "effective," immediately. He closed the door behind him. June exhaled for the first time in what felt like 20 minutes. Marlene blinked. "Well, then we'll move on to onboarding paperwork." Later that afternoon, June walked through the open-floor workspace toward her new office, a small but sunlit corner, tucked between logistics and systems. Several employees looked up. Some smiled. A few didn't. That was fine. She wasn't here to win them over. She was here to work. As she set her folder on the desk, she noticed something new beside her monitor, a single bottle of apple juice with a yellow sticky note attached. For emergencies? See. She smiled, then straightened her spine. She had a lot to prove, and every intention of doing just that. By the end of her second week, June Dawson had already stabilized 2 overlapping timelines. In logistics, salvaged a bottlenecked supplier contract and reorganized a redundant reporting process that no one had questioned in 3 years. Her onboarding file was still warm when Stratacore's executive dashboard logged a 4.7 operational efficiency spike in her department. None of that stopped the murmurs. She's the one from the hospital. Wright Cole personally onboarded her. HR wasn't even finished vetting. Single mum. Kind of a walking liability, if you ask me. The whispers grew louder after an op-ed dropped on the Wall Street Journal digital front page, Benevolence or Bias Stratacor. CEO's sudden shift sparks investor concerns. It didn't mention June by name. It didn't have to. Nathan read the article in full, jaw tightening with each vague accusation, cloaked in polished corporate language, unprecedented intervention, potential emotional entanglement, a break from Stratacor's traditionally performance-driven culture. His phone didn't stop buzzing all morning. Clients, board members, even a few executives with veiled concerns. At 10:06 a.m., HR VP Marlene Chase stepped into his office without knocking. "We need to talk," she said, folding the article printout in half. "The board has called an emergency review. They want a full timeline of your involvement in the Dawson hire starting from the hospital visit." Nathan didn't look up. "Are you concerned about her qualifications?" "No," Marlene said too quickly. "Her work is adequate." "Adequate. Outpaced logistics' last lead by 30. "That's not the point," Marlene replied. "You set a precedent. You personally advanced a candidate outside protocol. Now, we have a narrative we can't control." Nathan closed his laptop. "I'll speak to the board. Monday." "There's one more recommendation on the table," she added, standing straighter. "Relocate Miss Dawson to our Cleveland office. Quietly. It would protect the company." He finished the words bitter in his mouth. "Yes." He leaned back in his chair. "Relocating a single mother halfway across the country because people are uncomfortable with why she was hired is not strategy, Marlene. It's cowardice." Her lips thinned. "This isn't about comfort. It's about preserving the brand." Nathan didn't respond. He just turned his chair toward the window, dismissing her without a word. June heard about the article from a co-worker who didn't mean any harm. "I mean, it's crazy, right? 1 minute you're in the ICU, next minute you're the CEO's cause celebre. Wild." She nodded quietly and walked back to her office. Callie noticed her mood that evening as they made boxed mac and cheese. "Did something bad happen?" "Someone wrote something unkind," June replied. "But I'll be okay." Callie frowned. "You're still the smartest person I know." June smiled and stirred the noodles. "I hope that counts for something." That weekend, Nathan received a courier envelope from the board's legal team, inside a formal request for his presence at an emergency meeting. Attached was a memo suggesting reputational risk and a quiet proposal to suspend the flexible work pilot he'd launched after June's hiring. Also a line in small print recommending reassignment of employee June Dawson to avoid perceived impropriety. Nathan didn't react. He just walked to the old cabinet in the corner of his office, pulled out a manila folder labeled Policy D14 and laid it on his desk. He'd always known this would happen. He just hadn't expected it to feel so personal. The boardroom on the 36th floor of Stratacor rarely felt this full. 11 directors, legal counsel, 3 executive VPs, all seated beneath the polished steel Stratacor logo, which now felt more like a courtroom seal than a company brand. Nathan Cole entered the room without a binder or tablet, just a slim envelope in one hand. June followed 3 steps behind, calm but tense. Her blazer was buttoned, her eyes direct. She hadn't spoken during the ride-up. Neither had he. At the far end of the table sat board chairwoman Ruth Kim, flanked by vice chair Lionel Worth. "Mr. Cole," Ruth began, voice crisp, "we appreciate you appearing today. Given recent events, concerns have been raised." Nathan sat then, gestured for June to do the same. "Understood. We've seen a spike in media attention, Lionel added. We're fielding inquiries from shareholders, investors, and, frankly, competitors. There's a perception that your personal involvement with this employee may be clouding your professional judgment. Marlene Chase, seated off to the side, cleared her throat. There's also documentation showing unorthodox hiring activity, skipped steps in vetting, and policy deviations initiated without board approval. Nathan opened the envelope and pulled out a printed email thread. I'd like to address that. He passed copies down both sides of the table. What is this? Ruth asked. Metadata logs, Nathan replied. From our internal security team, tracing the leak to the Wall Street Journal, there was a beat of silence. I thought the source was anonymous, Lionel said, frowning. It was, Nathan agreed. Until we ran the sender IP against our internal network. The article's pitch and partial draft were sent 3 days before publication. He turned his gaze on Marlene. From your terminal? Marlene froze. That's absurd. Anyone could have used my computer. The document was saved under your profile, Nathan continued, and auto-synced to your StrataCore cloud drive. Our audit logs confirmed the metadata timestamp and user authentication. Marlene's voice cracked. I was trying to raise awareness. You attempted to use confidential personnel information to manipulate public perception, Nathan said, voice low but controlled, including information about my late wife and daughter. That's not policy enforcement. That's sabotage. Ruth turned to legal. Do we have grounds for immediate dismissal? Yes, the counsel replied. Breach of confidentiality, reputational harm, unauthorized communication with media, more than sufficient. Ruth looked back at Marlene. You're dismissed, effective immediately. Security will escort you out. Marlene stood stunned. You're letting a sympathy hire destroy protocol. No, June said, quietly rising to her feet. He's holding someone accountable for what you did with your power. Marlene said nothing more. She was gone in less than a minute. After the door clicked shut, Ruth exhaled. That was unexpected. Nathan didn't sit back down. There's something else, he said. Something I need to say while everyone's here. He walked to the head of the table. For most of my career, I measured value in numbers, deliverables, market returns. I prided myself on being efficient, unemotional, focused, until a little girl walked into our lobby and asked me to reschedule her mother's interview. He looked at June. That child's presence reminded me of what I lost. A wife who was pushed out of her career after becoming a mother. A daughter who never got to see what fairness looked like. He turned back to the board. Supporting June wasn't emotional. It was overdue. For her, for StrataCore, for the industry. Lionel frowned. You're saying this should be the new standard? No, Nathan said. I'm saying it already is. He placed a document on the table. Preliminary performance data from the flexible work pilot. Productivity up 11. Absenteeism down 9. Team retention highest since 2017. There was silence. June stepped forward. Her voice was calm but resonant. You were afraid I'd be a liability, she said, because I'm a single parent, because I got sick. But that fear is based on assumption, not data. Not performance, not facts. She looked around the table. If we want the best minds, we can't keep closing the door on people whose lives don't fit a perfect mold. Ruth leaned back in her chair, thoughtful. I propose we vote, she said, on making the pilot permanent and expanding its scope. Seconded murmured 2 voices at once. Hands went up one by one. 10 out of 11. Then Ruth added, and for the record, I also move that any discussion of reassignment or relocation regarding Ms. Dawson be permanently closed. Agreed, said Lionel. June sat again, her breath caught in her throat. It was done. But as Nathan looked around the table, he knew this wasn't the end of anything. It was the beginning of a new kind of leadership. One built not on control, but on courage. The front door to June's modest two-bedroom apartment creaked open with the usual stubborn resistance. Callie popped her head out first, barefoot and grinning. "You're exactly 2 minutes early," she declared as Nathan stepped inside. "I try not to disappoint dinner invitations," he said, handing her a paper bag. She peeked inside. "Garlic bread from DeLuca's. Your mum said it's your favorite." Callie gave him an approving nod. "You can stay." The apartment was warm and lived in. A drying rack near the radiator held little socks and a faded Seahawks hoodie. The coffee table was covered in markers, an abandoned math worksheet, and a volcano science project in progress. June emerged from the tiny kitchen apron, dusted with flower hair, pinned back with a pencil. "I told her not to greet you barefoot," she said, with a mock frown. She led with a smile, and a dinner check, Nathan replied. "I'll allow it." June laughed softly and gestured toward the dining table. "You hungry?" They sat down to plates of spaghetti that steamed in the soft kitchen light. June poured 2 glasses of red wine and a small tumbler of juice for Callie. The meal wasn't fancy, but it was real, richer somehow than the 5-star dinners Nathan was used to. Between bites, Callie launched into her project, a model volcano that actually erupted. "We're doing baking soda and vinegar for the main demo, but I saw online you can add dish soap and glitter." Nathan looked alarmed. "Glitter-controlled eruption," she reassured him. "Mostly." After dinner, Callie disappeared into the living room with her tablet headphones on, drawing new label ideas for the volcano project. June poured a second glass of wine and leaned on the back of her chair. "I'm guessing this wasn't just a social call," she said. Nathan's expression darkened slightly. "It's about the past. My past. And strata cores." He told her everything, the internal documents, the old memos, the quiet systemic practice of pushing mothers out through policy loopholes, including Caroline, his wife. June listened without interrupting. When he finished, she didn't look shocked, just tired. "That doesn't surprise me," she said. "It's just strange hearing it confirmed by someone who could actually change it." "That's what I want to do," he said. "Not with PR spins, not just with one pilot program. Real transparency, real structural change." She nodded slowly. "It's going to cost you, I know. Not just in reputation," she continued, "in trust. People will dig, they'll twist it, use it to paint your help as penance, not policy." Nathan studied the rim of his glass. "Is that how you see it?" June shook her head. "No. You didn't do all this to be forgiven. You did it because you stopped looking away." A beat of silence passed. Then she added, "That's rare, Nathan." He looked up at her. Something unreadable flickering in his eyes. And dangerous, she finished, voice quieter. "People like the system just the way it is." Nathan leaned forward slightly. "I want to publish the full internal history, not just as a mea culpa, but as a roadmap. What failed, what's changing. I want you to help me lead it." June blinked. "You want me to help dismantle the machine while I'm still inside it? Who better?" he said. "You've lived it from every side." Before she could answer, Callie wandered in, rubbing her eyes. "Did I miss anything?" Nathan smiled. "Just world-changing ideas. But you're still the boss of volcanoes." She nodded sleepily. "Good. Because I added glitter." As June guided her daughter back toward bed, Nathan stood and looked out the window toward the city's jagged skyline. What he was building now wasn't about redemption. It wasn't even about strategy. It was about legacy, the kind that didn't come with a press release, the kind you left behind in the lives you helped make better. It started with a drawer. 12 years of digital records, server-side logs, automated archiving systems, and one drawer. Locked dusty and wedged into a filing cabinet in Stratacor's off-site storage in Kent, Washington. June found it by accident. She'd requested old case studies for a systems audit. The delivery guy brought a misfiled box from 2014 instead. Inside thin manila folders, paper-clipped performance memos, and one envelope labeled in faded ink, S Restructure, Confidential, Caroline Cole. Her hand hesitated. She opened it. Inside, HR evaluations from Nathan's late wife's team. Warnings, early flags. Not about her performance. Her evaluations were stellar. But about pregnancy leave. One memo recommended preemptive restructuring to reduce conflict of interest. Another called Caroline's presence a liability to team productivity, citing her frequent medical appointments and emotional variability. June sat back slowly, her breath catching in her throat. Caroline had been pushed out. Quietly. Elegantly. On paper, it looked like she'd stepped back for family reasons. But these files told a different story, and someone had kept them hidden. That night, Nathan stood in his office, looking down at the envelope June had placed on his desk. He didn't open it. I always wondered why she never told me, he said. She probably thought she was protecting you, June replied. He finally looked up. She protected me from something I built. He sank into the chair, eyes hollow. She loved this place, believed in what it could be, and I let it forget her. June sat across from him. Then make sure it remembers now. Nathan opened the envelope, read every page. Then he turned to June. We publish it. You're sure this isn't about guilt? It's about truth. A week later, Fast Company ran the exclusive Inside Stratacor's Reckoning, the CEO, the widow's file, and the woman who changed the game. The article didn't sensationalize. It presented the documents, the timeline, the failure, and the new plan, a public audit of past terminations, a whistleblower protection initiative, a policy review board including current employees and outside advocates, co-chaired by June Dawson. The board had tried to delay the release. Investors panicked. Several clients issued cautious statements. But something else happened too. The inbox is filled with messages. From a former engineer I left quietly after my maternity request was denied. Reading this, I feel seen. From a father of twins. It's not just mums who get sidelined. Thank you for making space. From a 19-year-old intern, if this is what leadership looks like, I'm staying in tech. Stratacor didn't lose ground. It gained loyalty. On the 10th floor, Callie sat on a swivel chair beside her mum, coloring a sign that read, Welcome Audit Committee. It needs sparkle, she said, frowning. No glitter, June warned. Then sequins. Nathan stepped in, leaned over her shoulder. You'll be running HR in 5 years, won't you? Callie smirked. 5's a bit slow, don't you think? They all laughed. But somewhere deep in the company's servers, a new folder had been created. Cole, Dawson Initiative, Permanent Record. And under its first entry, the files no one was supposed to find. The Stanford Auditorium held about 400 people, but that afternoon it felt intimate. Nathan stood at the podium, not in his usual charcoal blazer, but a navy pullover sleeves rolled. No slide deck, no keynote polish, just him, a stool and a low microphone. He scanned the sea of faces, future engineers, MBAs, a few professors seated in the front row. They were expecting a talk about the evolution of operational efficiency in tech logistics. He gave them something else. I built a billion-dollar company by designing systems that moved things faster, he began. What I didn't realize was that some of those systems moved people out of the way. There was a hush. A pen clicked. Someone coughed. Caroline, my late wife, was one of the best operations strategists I ever met, and the company we built together quietly erased her, not maliciously, just efficiently. He paused, until a 7-year-old girl in a yellow raincoat walked into our lobby and asked me to do something I'd never done before. He let that land. Wait. A few students looked up from their notes. He continued. She didn't ask for charity. She asked for fairness. And that single moment forced me to look backward at what we lost and forward at what we could build instead. He stepped away from the podium and perched on the stool. This isn't a redemption story. It's a reconstruction, and it starts by changing what we measure. Click. Phones were recording now. We measured efficiency, profit, hours logged. But what about clarity, dignity? The cost of forcing brilliance to disappear quietly because someone needs to pick up a child from daycare. He told them about the files, about the metadata, about June, and about the boardroom vote that almost didn't go in her favor. He ended with this. Sometimes the most transformative thing a leader can do is to stand still long enough for someone overlooked to catch up. And when they do, let them lead. He stepped down to a long, silent pause. Then, applause. Slow at first, then building into a full standing ovation. Outside afterward, June waited beneath a sycamore tree, Callie at her side, spinning in lazy circles on the grass. How'd it go? June asked as Nathan joined them. You tell me, he said, glancing at the notification flood on his phone. I've been asked to give that talk in 3 other cities. One's in Tokyo. June smiled. You going? He shrugged. Not alone. Callie looked up. Can we visit a volcano there? Nathan chuckled. Let's finish your Model 1 first. The real ones are a little less glitter-friendly. June watched him for a long beat. You know this isn't the end, right? He nodded. It's just the next version. Weeks later, the Stanford lecture would be taught in leadership seminars. The New York Times would call it the day accountability took the stage. The quote about standing still would go viral, but none of that mattered as much as the quiet moment 3 people shared on a sunny campus lawn. A child spinning, a woman watching, a man finally still, and for once, whole. The rain fell soft, and even the kind that makes city noise retreat into a hush. Inside the Stratacore Seattle campus, light shimmered on the glass atrium as guests filtered in. Name badges, umbrellas, the sound of shoes on tile. Today was the launch of something new. The Dawson Initiative for Equitable Systems. It wasn't just a policy platform, it was a division, fully staffed, fully funded, and fully autonomous. It would audit every future product line Stratacore built, every hiring policy, every external vendor contract for embedded bias and long-term impact. The event wasn't public, but the press had still come. So had old board members, tech critics, skeptics. Nathan stood by the stage with a cup of tea, watching as the room filled. His hair was grayer now, not just at the temples, but his posture was easier, his silence no longer defensive, just deliberate. Across the room, June shook hands with a group from the Department of Labor. She wore soft navy no blazer. Her badge said, Co-Executive Director. Someone tapped Nathan's arm. Excuse me. Mr. Cole. He turned. A woman in her 20s stood there, nervously holding a copy of the Fast Company article from years ago. I just wanted to say, I dropped out of my first tech job because I thought I had to choose between my pregnancy and my future. Your story Hers, it changed everything for me. I'm back in school now, computer science. Nathan blinked. What's your name, Alice? He reached out, shook her hand. Finish school, Alice. We'll need you. The lights dimmed. The crowd quieted. June took the stage first. She didn't start with metrics. She started with a memory. I once had to choose between showing up for a job interview or staying alive. I had pneumonia. I had a child at home, and all I wanted was a chance. She let the words hang in the silence. Fairness isn't free. It costs attention. It costs effort. And for too long we've outsourced that cost to the people with the least to spare. A pause. That ends now. She stepped back. The room rose in applause. Outside, after the ceremony, Callie stood under her old yellow raincoat, smaller now, handed to a child younger than she'd been that day in the Stratacore lobby. Her cousin tugged on the sleeve. "Why do you keep this old one?" Callie smiled. "Because it worked." Nathan stood nearby, hands in his coat pockets, watching them. "You still carry that moment like a lighthouse," June said softly beside him. "I don't think I'll ever forget it," he replied. She looked at him. "Good. Neither will the world." That evening, back in his office, the one with the old filing cabinet now permanently unlocked, Nathan opened the bottom drawer. Inside, a photo. Caroline, laughing, holding a toddler with pigtails, a project proposal tucked under one arm. He placed it on his desk, then beside it a new one. June and Callie at the Volcano Fair, covered in glitter. He sat back. Outside, the rain kept falling, soft, even, cleansing. But inside these walls a storm had passed, and in its place, structure, balance, legacy, the kind that doesn't forget where it started, especially when it starts with a girl in a yellow raincoat who asked the world to wait, and found a man, a system, who finally listened. If this story moved you, we'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Your support helps us bring more voices and hidden stories to life. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss the next chapter. There's always more to uncover, and we'd be honored to have you with us.